And in fact, the controversy over executive pay so dominant it is now seeping into popular culture. Check out NBC's hit show 30 Rock from last night.
Is it true, Mr. Donaghy, that your executives routinely use company helicopters to dry their home tennis courts?
Yes and no. Yes, that did happen. No, it didn't not happen.
And that GE kept a party clown on retainer with a six-figure salary?
Well, Silly Willie's fee was amortized over all birthdays company-wide.
I'm being told that company money is being gambled at racetracks.
Yes, but I have a system. You go and tell your president the truth. We don't need the government telling us how to run our industry.
I've heard enough.
Why do you have a gavel? This isn't the Congress.
I brought it from home.
Oh, I'm so glad they get it.
30 Rock is so great. Alec Baldwin is great. All right, but back to the serious stuff. Should the very same people who dropped the ball in the financial crisis set the rules for executive compensation? Is it going to work? The Federal Reserve, completely unable to recognize the rampant risk in the system, is now going to manage compensation in order to reduce risk? Joining us for the PowerGrid debate, Democratic strategist Julian Epstein and Jim MacDougald, chairman and CEO of the Free Enterprise Nation. Guys, you know how it works. You both have 20 seconds to make your case. Julian, we start with you. Why is this a good idea?
Well, it's not the same, guys. It was the Bush administration that missed the ball in the financial crisis. It's the Obama administration that's fixing it. For the most part, it should be corporate governance that determines executive compensation. It's a different deal entirely, however, when you're talking about financial institutions that have been feeding at the trough of government aid. The government essentially becomes a shareholder and has a right to incentivize the pay structure in a more effective way.
Jim, 20 seconds on why you think this is a bad idea.
It's a bad idea because government has demonstrated it can't manage its own business. It's incurring trillions of dollars of debt every year. The average federal worker earns twice as much as the average private sector worker. The guy that runs a postal service made $800,000 last year. The people who ran Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac each made millions of dollars a year. We think the government needs to concentrate on policing up its own house first.
Julian, you hear that? That kind of pushes aside this argument that if the government's the biggest investor, they have the right to say.
I think that's a silly argument, with all due respect. I think the last time the Democrats were in control of the White House, we had a surplus in our budget. The reason we had a deficit was because Republicans acted so irresponsibly and put everything on the credit card. Here you're talking about a system where, again, I say, in the private sector, for the most part, corporate governance and transparency ought to be determining what the rules are for compensation. But we're talking about a situation now where the government's trying to fix an incentive structure that's just wrong. And merely what the government is doing for financial institutions that take government aid is to basically incentivize good decision making. What we've seen with the banks, for example, is they've got all this money, but they're not lending. They're trading their own books.
Do you think that the way they are talking about dealing with compensation right now, Jim, is going to fix the incentive structure to reduce excessive risk?
No, I don't think it will reduce the incentive structure, too. There's always another way to find out how to pay people. The bottom line is that the government shouldn't be deciding how private industry is run. It works pretty well itself. If they fail, they lose their jobs or the company goes broke. That's how free enterprise works.
Right, but government workers never lose their jobs. Julian, explain this to me. The Federal Reserve, Julian, hold on. The Federal Reserve says they're going to look at these compensation structures and help determine whether or not they're going to increase risk. This is the very same Federal Reserve that watched what happened with the housing bubble and said, don't worry, there's no rampant risk in the system.
And all the regulators like the SEC and everyone else that were asleep at the switch. So I think as a general matter, your guess is correct that the government should not get involved in compensation. We're talking about a situation now where the government is effectively a shareholder with many of the financial institutions because it had to bail them out.
But answer Jim's point. When the government is involved in anything, when it comes to the Postal Service, for example, we see excessive pay there as well. So how's this going to be different?
I don't think that is necessarily true across the board. And I think you have to evaluate this on the merits. And what the government is doing right here is saying rather than having guaranteed bonuses and guaranteed pay, we're going to tie compensation to performance. We're going to put it, rather than cash, we're going to put it in stocks. We're going to tell you have to hold the stocks for several years. And what you will do, if you can combine that reform with other reforms like capital requirements, getting rid of the conflicts of interest with the rating agencies, commercial and investment banking, then you begin to change the casino-like atmosphere that you're seeing with many of the investment banks.
Yes, we'll change human nature forever. Thank you, Julian.
No, it doesn't change nature. It changes incentives. There's a big difference between those two things.
See you later.
I think it's a breath of fresh air, if I'd like to.
Yeah.
I really do. I think it's an absolute breath.
He's from Europe. What do you expect?
Real anger on Main Street, and you've got to extract a cost.
It's populism.
These companies
It's
are getting an economic
That
rent
is
from
populism.
being supported. No, it's not.
They get along
It's the way
so
forward,
well.
Michelle.
It's
It's the way
amazing.
forward. You watch and learn.
You're on the record.
We're going to
All
be
right.
like Europe. Oh, my goodness.